Okay. So first I will show you how you can add a light beam. If you have a light, like not on the sky, but if you have a table lamp, if you want to show a light beam, how you will show that. Okay. So how many of you have already a suspended light in your drawing? This kind of light, you have it? Yes? Okay. So I will show it to you. And then if you don't have the light, you can use, if you have a table lamp, you can add the table lamp. If you have a table lamp somewhere here, you can add the same thing. You can use the same technique to do that. Okay. So what I will do, I will just make a new, if you see here, that plus sign, I'm just making a new layer just to, and I will say that a light beam. Okay. And once you do that, make sure you are in a light beam layer. You're not any other layer, but on the light beam that's active. Once you do that, just select the rectangular marquee tool. That's the dash one in here. Can you see that one? You must have somewhere else, but just make sure it is like a dotted rectangle. I will just draw that somewhere close to my light fixture like that. Okay. And then what I will do, if you see here, there is a paint bucket. Okay. I will click on that small triangle there and go use gradient tool. Okay. Once I do the gradient, I will click on top here, gradient. Just go to classic gradient. Let me just see. If you just click on here, the basic, if you click on basic, you get like few colors. And there is, if you see the backdrop with the checkered, you can have a gray or any other color depending upon how you have worked. So I will just use the checkered one because that becomes transparent. And then I will just click on this, the bucket at the bottom here. So once you click on it, your color shows here. Can you see there? That's color shows there. So I will click on that color and maybe I'll just go more towards yellow. Something like that. You can just see. And then just check okay. Okay. Now, once you do that, you have done all these. Now, when we have to use a gradient, this is my box, right? I am keeping my mouse on top of it. And now, once you click on somewhere, you need to pull down in that rectangle. Okay? You get this kind of gradient tool here. Okay? So now, as you see something in here. But when we are in the light beam, you need to change a layer style from normal to, if you just click on here, I'm just showing you here, you just need to change normal to overlay. And if you want to change the opacity, you can change the opacity later. But now that is important step. You need to change from normal to overlay. Okay. Now we need to make as a beam, right? So what we need to do, we are using Control T or transform tool multiple times. So what I will do, I will say Control T, or you can go in edit and a free transform. Okay. And then once you do that, you right click and say distort. So what I will do, I will just make nice rectangle that shows there. Okay. And I will say Control D. And if you want to do the warp, if you see the warp, it will give you more pointers to align and show exact. So when you are in there, distort, just do that. And then you can just use like these pointers to look like more of a beam. But still it's like nice and prominent. You can just play along with that, work on the way it is. And then just, if you have something selected like that, just say Control D, that is deselect everything. And then does this look like this? But still it's like, oops, Control Z. Still it's look like more of like a bright light. So what you need to do, we need to make it a blur. So it just fades out. So what you can do, you can go in a filter, okay? And go in a blur. And then you can just say Gaussian blur and just see how it looks. Maybe it just get blur, right? So if you see here, if I just change, add more, it's just getting blur. So you can just see how it looks, and then just as per your desire, you can just keep it like that, and you have that, something like that. Okay, so if I just keep in there and I want to show a light beam in here, so I'll just keep it light beam in here. And what I will do for the sunlight coming from the window, I will select this one, okay? That is called lasso tool or polygon lasso tool. I can just use a polygon lasso tool. And what I will see, if you see here, that's my window, right? So I just add some angle. Okay. And you can just add that same here, or you can just keep it like a smaller for like later. But I'm just keeping in the light beam and see how it looks. If I'm not happy, I can just change or make a new layer. So now we have the gradient tool here, right? That we have already selected with the yellow color. So what I will do now, I will use a gradient in that box now. Now, can you see how it looks? Let me just say Control D. It kind of shows that light is coming from that. And because of you have changed the overlay and everything. So if you want to make more blur, you can just change the blur and add numbers. So it will be like nice and blur. But this will, you can show you if you have a windows, like a lot of windows, or if you have something like in like any other project. So you can use the similar kind to show the same thing for the light beam and the sunlight from the windows. Okay, you guys are good? Yes. So that was the sunlight. Now let's add humans in here. So let me just open the humans. Let me just open the same person there. Okay, so whenever you're copying anything from different layer, it's simple way to import in here is what you need to do. If you see here, I have opened that person, right? So now I will click on the layer on that. I'm not going in my rendering, but just that person or the man there. I will just say duplicate layer. Okay. But when I'm duplicating, I will say maybe human, 1 or 2 or how many you have. But when you see the document destination, you will change a document destination to your project or your rendering. So that's my Spring demo. I will say, okay. So you will not notice whatever happened here, but when you go here, oh, why that person shows in here like that? It should be a duplicate. Let's duplicate. Why it's just, oops, Control Z. Just make sure you have that Control Z. Let's delete this one. I don't want this. Okay. So make sure it's PNG, just not the pixelated image there. Okay. So now I will do again, I will show you again, duplicate layer. I will say human to change the destination document. Now it just shows like that, right? So now this is kind of smaller. Like what I will do now, whenever you see that human, you just say Control T. Make sure you are on the same layer that human. So once it's Control T, you will just pull that, keep it here. And now you need to understand if this is 10 feet and where you need to scale it as you want, like this. I think that will be okay. So I place that human, okay? So you just place that human there. Now, if you want to see here, the light coming from here, so maybe if you have to some shadows or you want to add some shadows in there, depending upon how you're not in the hybrid, but any of other rendering, if you want to add some shadows, what you need to do, I will talk about. So did you understand how to add humans there? Now what I will do, I will just duplicate the human. Okay, duplicate layer, and I will say shadow. Okay, and I will keep that below that human layer. Okay, and then once you do that, I will right click on that shadow and say, where is my blending option? Go to the blending option. Make sure you're selecting a shadow and go in a blending option and click on color overlay. Once you check that, click on color overlay text and go in the gray color, change to black and say okay. But now if you notice here, what I did is not visible because the shadow is below the human. Now, can you see that? It's just black in there, right? So what I will do now, I will select that shadow. Now make sure you select the shadow as active layer, okay? And then say Control T. And what I will do, I will just rotate that. Oh, I want this, maybe Control V. Yeah, I just did rotate 180 degree, and I will keep something like this. But when you have a shadow, it is not, he's not standing in the water, so you can see the reflection directly outward, like, right? But it's on the floor. So what you will do now, you will distort first, and then I will show you what it will look like, a basically shadow. So now say distort and just play around. You need to just play with your instinct and see how it looks. And shadows can be longer, shorter, depending upon the time of the day. So you can just add that shadow, and then after that, you can just play along if you want to. Okay. And then I will just say enter just for now. Okay. Now we have put it below, but it's too dark, right? So when you're in shadow, make sure change the opacity to like a 70%. So it will become lighter. Okay. And then we need to go in a filter. Again, we use a filter for lighting as well, but now we will use for shadow. So when we are doing the filter, you will go in a blur, and this time we will use a shape blur. Okay. And then if you see, you can just change the shape. And can you see the bigger the number, the shape get distorted? So you can just give like more of 25 to 30 and see how it looks. Maybe I will just increase the opacity. I just don't want too dark or like just a lighter shadow like that. And that way you can add shadows to your prop, like any of the objects. So if you want to add some shadows for here as well, you can just use, like if you want to add a shadow to your couch, what you can do, you can just use, what is this? The lasso tool, polygon lasso tool. You can just see, make sure all the angles should be right, right? So I will just add this one. If you see here, it just comes like somewhere here. So I'll complete that just to get there. I complete that box, okay? And then I will do the gradient, but this time instead of yellow, I will just use like a black or gray, okay? And then I will do the same thing, but you need to make sure if you're doing it, I'm still in the shadow, so that's perfectly fine. I'm still in the shadow, but if you don't want to be in shadow, you can select, if you have few, instead of black or gray, what you can do if you want to match with the flooring so it will not be overpowering, you can select any of these color for the grading, like a bit darker color. And let's go to the gradient. And select this color. Say okay. And make a new, I was just showing on the same layer, but I want you to add like a shadows for furniture or any other thing that you can use in there. And then you just add this here, change this to, no, overlay, it's kind of right, that's okay. You just make sure, change the opacity to lighter, nice and light. And use some blur again, because we have made a new layer. So you will go in blur, shape blur, say okay, Control D. So kind of you need to make it blur it more, just to you don't need that actual corner there, but you can add that way the shadows for everything. You can add shadows in here and shadows for everything. And the way you added the humans, you will add the entourages the same way, okay? So if I have to add like a fire in my fireplace, or any planter or anything in here, so I will just duplicate, open that first, duplicate layer, always change the destination document to your rendering, say okay, and you get that here. So now I got that. So whenever you get this, make sure you rename it as entourages or whatever you want to say. The renaming of the layer is really important. Otherwise, you will lost in that lot many layers there. Now, if you see, I have to just put that on the mantle, so that I will just make it a bit smaller. And then I can just distort so it can fit on the mantle there. And if you see here, you can just add, like I can just go in a shadow in a furniture, and I can just use like a pencil or a paintbrush just to a smaller size maybe. And you can just add some shade, like just to behind, just to have some shadows there, just to paint it there. So when make sure you are in the shadows in here. But what happened? I choose a brown. That's why it shows brown. But if you want to select the gray, you can change the color and then show the shadow in there. So whatever you add, make sure it looks like inside the rendering, adding some shadows and some base. So it will not look like you have just copied and pasted it there, but it doesn't feel inside that view, right? So same way you add the planters and anything, and then you can work on, but make sure you scale it accordingly as per your design. That is more the key. Okay. You good? Guy, will you guys able to work on? Okay. So start working on it. I think that's it that you can work on. And the things this we are doing it today, that we will work again. I will show you the renderings when we just take the Revit renderings directly, from the Enscape or from the cloud, and then how you can enhance, because that's ready, right? But still you can enhance, adding some light fixtures, some beams to that. Now you work in Enscape, so you still have entourages, but if you want to have a different style of people, not a real people, you can use black or white, different kinds of people that you can add in there too. Okay. So keep working on this, and then we will do the floor plan on Wednesday. Okay. So this will be